So welcome everyone to Yoga Samadhi. For those of you who haven't met me, I am Ajahn Cunda. And I'm one of the monks who lives at the Pacific Hermitage here in White Salmon. So tonight we'll start with a chant, and then I'll lead a guided meditation for about a half an hour. And then we'll have a short break, and then a reflection and a question and answer afterwards. Can you hear me okay in the back? I'll try to speak up a little more. So on page 41, Reflection on Universal Well-Being in English. Forty-one. Okay. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. As we enter into a physical space like this, we can feel welcome, or we can feel anxious, interested. All kinds of emotions can occur. We come into a particular location, Just being aware of the present state of the mind. Acknowledging that we don't often have control of that state. So it's also important in our meditative life to question how we enter the space of the mind. Is it a welcoming experience? Do we have interest in what it is that we're trying to do? Do we have a genuine interest in overcoming stress or discontent? Or just to understand the present state of our experience? Sometimes when we're meditating, we forget to check in with ourselves. So we might not know, for example, why we're feeling agitated or activated, energized. Sometimes we don't know why we're happy or gladdened. The why is not so important as much as the fact that we are experiencing something in our minds. And so it's important to develop a welcoming attitude. A sense that whatever is occurring with our mindfulness, we're able to see it and allow it to be there. So this goes hand in hand with the chant that we just recited. May I abide in well-being. There's a sense of wishing ourselves well. We don't say, may I abide in ill will. Or may disaster come to me. Instead, we're wishing with kindness, compassion towards ourselves. For many people, this is not very easy to do. To bring in that state of mind, that well-wishing kindness towards oneself. So what we're trying to do with that is actually generate an experience of that well-wishing within. That friendliness towards ourselves. So one of the ways that is traditionally performed in this endeavor is to actually repeat phrases. So we might say, may I be happy and filled with joy. But it's important to recognize that joy, to recognize happiness in our experience. It's not just repeating an empty phrase. It's like starting an engine that's cold sometimes. We need to bring that emotion into our heart. So we can remember times when we've been happy, remember times when we have wished ourselves well or others well. Some people who have difficulties with this can just imagine a sleeping kitten or a puppy in your lap. And the well-wishing you have for that being. You can wish the same for yourself. You can bring in another phrase around peace. May I be peaceful and calm. We can acknowledge problems in our life and wish us free from those problems, wish ourselves. You might say, may no harm come to me. May no difficulty come to me. So again, we're bringing in that experience of wishing ourselves well, freedom from harm, freedom from difficulty. You can repeat these phrases, but also try to bring in that emotional tone of well-wishing. can wish ourselves freedom from negative emotions. What would it be like to no longer experience, to be free of certain negative emotions? May I be free of negativity, jealousy, and ill will. May I no longer experience these emotions. Or if I experience them, may they not be a hindrance on my mind or my heart. We can invite in positive emotions, skillful emotions. May I be filled with positivity, gladness, and goodwill. May I encourage positive perceptions, gladness and happiness for others' successes. May I experience goodwill for myself and others. We can generate the wish, may I and all beings live at ease. have the patience, determination, integrity, and wisdom to meet with and accept the inevitable difficulties and failures in life. May I continue to realize spiritual success. You can take a few minutes break, stretch your legs, and come back for reflection. So I arrived at Pacific Hermitage about 8 months ago, and came to White Salmon for the second time in my life. First time was over a decade ago. And now there is departing, or so that's the plan. And just recognizing that change, that sense of circumstances changing, life changing, relationships. There are emotional changes, there's behavioral patterns, all kinds of things. And I can see that often my mind is resistant to that, can be resistant to change. Want things to stay the same, to be comfortable. And yet, this is the experience we have no matter what we do, really. There's just always change happening. So this is the core tenet that the Buddha teaches about, called anicca, or impermanence. And just as I was encouraging in the guided meditation, there can also be a sense of welcoming that rather than resisting it. So a helpful reflection for me often is how can I not move towards negative emotions when I'm dealing with aversion to any kind of changes occurring, whether it's changes in my body, changes in that aren't positive, changes in relationships with other people, even if they are positive, just acknowledging that they ultimately will change as well. And so it's often people think about Buddhism as like a depressive religion or something that's just too negative. But I think it's much more of a realistic religion. It's an acknowledgement of the facts of life, but it's also through that acknowledgement that we experience the highest happiness, or we have the potential to experience the highest happiness. And the Buddha is really encouraging us to see that it's our choice, how we adapt to life circumstances. And so I often try to challenge myself if, it's pretty easy for me to feel anxiety around certain things, and so then I kind of need to ask myself often, well, what's that about? Is that really, it's often what I find is I just don't want something to change, or I really want to be in control. I don't want, I want to be the one who says, basically, that something does or doesn't happen. But the irony is that when there's this acknowledgement, this acceptance that things really aren't in our control, that I'm not the one essentially steering the boat, I'm just the one steering my mind, then I have a sense of letting go, of understanding that there isn't so much importance that I give to making sure that I have control of something, or that a particular thing won't change, a relationship or a place where I live, or the people I know staying the same, being in my life. I think about it as a monk, we deal with, sometimes we'll talk about these 4 requisites that the Buddha says that we have, we need to kind of use well, but there are kind of the four requisites that we can rely on to use in our life. So one is shelter, and he says, as I've told you before, that the reliable shelter is the root of a tree. That's what you can rely on. Although sometimes it's harder to find trees these days, but that's the bare minimum, he says. That's what you can expect. You can't expect a roof over your head. You can't expect, to necessarily always remain dry and warm, but just a place. A simple place that you can be in, return to. And he talks about what monks and nuns wear, which are robes that you see. And he says, well, you can expect robes. You can expect the bare minimum is rags that you find on the ground, or in a cemetery. In the time of the Buddha, bodies were wrapped in cloth, so it was considered okay to, in Indian culture at that time, to take that cloth from a corpse and use that for yourself. Lumpur Pasno is going to come here tomorrow night, did just that. At one point in his monastic life, he was able to get a cloth that had been used to wrap a corpse, and I think he dyed it, but he said he couldn't actually remove the smell completely. I'm not sure how long he wore it. But these are things that, even one could get attached to. My corpse cloth that I so proudly procured and made into a robe cloth. So we can get attached to these things and want them to be a particular way. The food that we have, or medicine, to feel entitled in some way. So the reflection is often around, like, am I okay with things changing? Am I okay when I see that, there's a hole in my robe? Or is there this kind of disappointment? And the disappointment that occurs is, it shouldn't be that way. Why does my robe have a hole in it? So that's the dukkha, that's the kind of stress that can occur. And what we have the potential for is to see, I didn't get what I wanted, but I can repair the robe. I can repair my situation. I can take care of that. So we have a relationship in our life that sours, and we can either do something about that. We can rise to the occasion and address that with another person. Sometimes, though, we can't, and we move on. So, okay, I did my best, or I admit my own fault in the situation. But we do our best, and so we see clearly what hasn't helped or what's helped, and what we actually can do in a situation, and then we continue on. We don't want to try to suffer around it, create more suffering in our lives. So, as an example, what's happening in the monastery right now, there's often usually just 3 monastics who are living there, and so it's been part of the plan for a while that Lumpur Pasno is coming in, and Ajahn Cunda, who spent a lot of time here, is also coming in for the Pansa, the Vasa period, this 4-month period that is called the rainy season. It's rainy in India, but not so rainy here during that time. So the summertime, those 2 monks, very venerable monks, and then Tangino and Tandamoro will be departing first, and then about a week and a half later I'll depart. And so, there is a sense of like, oh, change. Wow, what am I going to do about this change? And it's interesting because the fact is, like, there's never really been a problem, it always works out in one way or another. Even if, you think about the big problem in life, like we're going to die. But for most of us, it does work out, We don't there's not, it's usually much worse in our minds than, the actual process of losing our own lives or losing those we love. There's so much anxiety around that it can seem completely overwhelming, but when we're in the present moment with it, it's not so hard. I remember one man talking about a point in his life when he realized that he was dying. He was in the hospital, and his breathing was becoming more and more labored and more difficult. And he thought he just didn't, he didn't really have much over his many years of practicing the Buddha Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha. And so, of course, as with many people, panic came in, and but then he realized in his practice I can just be witness to my breath. And so as he was dying, he just noticed one breath in and one breath out. And he stayed steadily with that through this experience, and it turned out he didn't die. But before that, he just thought, well, my practice hasn't really led up to much, hasn't brought me to much resolution, or I don't think that I've gotten much out of my practice. And after that, he kind of thought the same thing too. But when he described this story to his friends, they said, well, I'm not sure if that's true. Because he was in the present moment. He was with his own experience. He wasn't pushing it away. He wasn't trying to deny it. He was accepting it for what it was. And so when we deal with this anicca, when we deal with the inevitable changes in our lives, of course it doesn't have to be as dramatic as our own death. It can just be our everyday living. But we have a challenge over and over again to meet that with the present moment, with just being with our minds, being willing to be with our current situations that we might otherwise not really want to deal with. And it's the training in the little things that leads to how we deal with the larger problems in our lives. So for this example that I gave, it was his training for many, many years that allowed him to be okay with this man's own death. And so we want to kind of see what we're doing with our practice as a continual setting ourselves up for skillful reactions, skillful ways of encountering the greater difficulties in our life. And so it's not in kind of sometimes thinking of the bigger problems, how am I going to deal with that? It's actually thinking of every moment, how am I dealing with this present difficulty I'm having? Or even if we're happy, we can recollect, oh yeah, but this happiness is going to go away and it's going to be replaced by something else. How am I going to deal with that? Am I going to miss it? Am I going to be upset when it's gone? So that doesn't mean that we then say, well, I better be unhappy. That's the answer, is I'll just make myself unhappy and then I won't have to worry about the happiness going away. It's more just like the acknowledgement, yeah, it's always changing. This is going to change. And so when we really, really get that, then when we're experiencing an argument with somebody or something that's kind of heart-wrenching, somebody who in our life is experiencing a lot of pain, we just can say, well, I can be with this moment right now because that's all I know. I don't actually know how it's going to turn out. I think I know, or I'm pretty sure it's going to go this way, but it rarely does go the way that we think it will. the harder part about this is that all these little things, they don't seem to matter so much, you know. While we were meditating, just at the end of the meditation, I saw that my alarm was going to go off, and it was set on a vibration, so it was going to be silent. And I touched the watch, and there was a beep. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I just thought, oh, that was stupid. I just disturbed everybody's meditation. I prefer a nice sounding bell than to sit. And it's like, you know, but if I just passed up that moment of disappointment or aversion towards myself for inadvertently pressing a button, you know, and not saw that as like, oh, there it is. That's a moment to watch my own typical pattern of behavior, of disappointment around something, or even shaking my head, oh, that was stupid. And just to see that immediate response, and then it's just this little thing, just this, oh, okay, there's some aversion arising. It's not personal, it's not even a problem. And in that acknowledgement, there's not that second arrow of adding more stress to it, you know, oh, how could I have been so stupid? And it's like, you know, it's just such a little thing. And so I think we have to be really, you know, really careful with these moments in our life that are always possibly there. And it's important to detect where it is that we're not seeing our typical modes of where we go in unskillful directions. So even just something about getting excited about going to see someone we know, or like something that we're really interested in doing, just that kind of sense of like, oh, well, I don't really know how it's going to go, or I'm happy now, but you know, maybe just not to get so carried away with this. And also to know, well, this is pleasant. You know, happiness can be pleasant. There's nothing wrong with happiness. And when we're meditating, that's very important too. It's like, you know, sometimes when we're meditating, we can really focus on dreary, difficult experiences that we're having, pain, or in our bodies, or just, you know, remorse over something, anger at our own distraction, whatever it might be. And then when we really move towards acceptance and wishing ourselves well, and investigating that process that we have, the unskillful direction that we tend to move in, and then saying, oh, wait a minute, that's unskillful. We identify it, and we say, what can I do that's skillful here? You know, can I bring in happiness? Can I bring in something that's actually pleasant for myself? For example, if you're feeling something unpleasant in your body, it's not, as one who's getting more skilled in meditation, it's helpful to see, well, maybe focusing on that very unpleasant experience isn't helping my mind. It seems to be getting more constricted. So where is a place in my body that I'm feeling pleasant? So it might be like, instead of my left shoulder, it's my right shoulder. Oh, my right shoulder actually feels quite pleasant. And then when I notice that, I actually notice that the pain that I was experiencing diminishes by a fair amount. Because I was focusing on the negative, I was focusing on the painful aspect of it, and that was what was overwhelming my mind. So then when I pay attention to something pleasant, I see, oh, the mind isn't overwhelmed, and then by the mind not being overwhelmed, then there's less constriction, less stress. And then I'm sometimes able to then go back into a more painful part of my body from a less constricted point of view. So I'm bringing this up as an encouragement towards really trying to understand our minds as often as we can in the typical directions that we move in. And so for myself, and how I brought up this topic, it's kind of a resistance I see to change. You know, the resistance to something that I don't want to have happen is going to happen. And again, one way is just to acknowledge, well, I have no idea what that is. The reason that I think that it's unpleasant is because I'm already guessing at what the problem's going to be. And as I was pointing out, I was talking about, maybe I jumped a bit much talking about death from those little experiences, but it can go that far. It can be in the biggest things or the smallest things in our lives. And so we're really trying to uproot our tendencies so that then we have more freedom and allowing of wisdom to come into our experience. And wisdom arises when we actually see clearly, and we don't go into the typical ways that aren't very helpful for us. Don't go into the modes that are unhelpful. And I just want to say that that's not easy, and this practice is not easy, and that's why a lot of people give up, or they don't have as much interest, or they find that generating the effort to deal with it on a moment-to-moment basis it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of effort. And we also are dealing with, a tendency to be distracted. So I think it's, as I pointed out sometimes before, that one of the ways we want to really work on this path is to develop a healthy voice within ourselves. So kind of talking ourselves into wholesome. I keep doing that. Maybe it's helpful to move in this direction, like we would, a child. You think about how you talk to a child. It's not really helpful if it's harsh, if it's angry. It's much more helpful in an encouraging way to talk to ourselves and, kind of to be a friend, to be friendly with ourselves. And when we do that, then we, okay, yeah, that probably is right. I should probably do something different in this situation. Because the times that I've followed that path, it hasn't really helped. And so it's not a chiding thing. It's not like, you're wrong again. It's just encouraging, that voice of encouragement. But I think for myself, just speaking from my own experience, it's sometimes hard to find that voice. Because it's easier to say like, oh, that was stupid. So one of the things, though, that comes with change is that we get sometimes very positive results. So one very positive result of a change is that Lumpur Pasano is coming here, and I feel a lot of this gladness and mudita for all of you who get to be with him for the next 4 months, and he'll be here hopefully every Tuesday, and I can feel a lot of gladness with that. So rather than thinking about, oh, what am I going to do, and okay, and Lumpur's coming, and I have to prepare, myself and the other monks are preparing the house for him, the kuti, the monastery for him. There can be anxiety, but then there's this, oh, right, this is all for goodness. This is for Lumpur coming, and wanting him to be happy and comfortable, and then all of the thoughts of the goodness that he can bring into the community here, as well as Ajahn Cunda. I don't want to leave out that as well. And also Anagar Katai is coming. So I've just reflecting on my time here. It's been really wonderful to have been part of the community and to have been up here. I didn't have a connection at all with the Pacific Hermitage, and then when I was asked to come here, I thought, yeah, I can do that. And it's been really, a blessing for me. It's been really lovely for me to be here and get to know the community. And I feel that after living here, I can say, wow, that this is one of my only experiences where such a local community so closely supports a monastery. Like that's within a couple of miles of the monastery. And that's been rare. I've been around a lot of monasteries, and it's been rare to have had this much support from the locals who live so close. So one way to think about it is over the last 8 months, I've been fed at least 5 days a week through the local community. So I probably would have died without that, or been very miserable. So it's just recollecting that kindness and all of the looking after the monastery in many ways, and also just the emotional support, the emotional looking after the monastery, the ways of kindness and giving and the care that people have. It's really, it's brought a smile to my heart. It's been a very beautiful experience for me. So I feel very thankful for that. And just watching in my mind, these, as I've mentioned, these changes I've had on the monastic side, very helpful monks who've lived with me, Ajahn Cunda for about a month, and Tanisabo for 4 months, and my venerable friends here, Tanjino and Tandamorao, for the last 2.5 months. It's been really really gladdening to the heart. And so, I could move into the mind's tendencies of, it should have been better, should have been more like this, or I wish it was, I could have stayed longer, or like, living with other monastics, there can easily be some annoyance that comes up. You just imagine living with others in your own lives. It's for each of us, this comes up, and I think often that comes up because there's a forgetting of the positive, all of the positive qualities, which certainly overwhelm any negative experiences. And when I think of those, and I say, wow, this is a life of incredible fortune. And so I try to make that choice, to bring that in, to bring that kindness in and that caring in from all the people who have cared for me in my life as a monk. Sometimes, as I was talking about with the requisites, it's helpful just to look at these requisites and say, since I don't use money, everything is given. So obviously the food is given, and that's every day I usually ask the monks, because I haven't gone on alms round. They say, who's this from, and who's that from? Oh, she made this today, or just the sitting cloth I've had this cloth that I sit on for almost 15 years now. And this was a given cloth. Everything that I have on me. And so I can overlook that and just think, there's a hole in this. Or I could say, I'm so thankful for everything outside of that hole. So I just want to encourage that in people's practice, utilizing how you pick up the things in your mind and how well you can kind of try to change your perceptions or change the way that you tend to move in certain directions that you might find are not always so skillful. But just to also remember that it's not in the bigger things in life, it's just in the smaller things that we're training in. It's in those little moments that we notice oh, I could maybe do a little bit better here. You know, not, I'm an idiot, I should do better, but, oh no, this could be a potential for my awakening. Sometimes we have a phrase that we will say to each other, some of the monastics, may it be a cause for the realization of Nibbana. And so sometimes you can say that to yourself. You're in an argument with a friend or something, and you're about to say something really disastrous, and you say, if I don't say this, may it be a cause for the realization of Nibbana. And it completely changes the tone. You know, you just can't say that thing you wanted to say anymore. So yes, I've been very happy to have been here for this period of time. I reflect sometimes, well, it's been about 8 months now, and there's not too many 8-month periods we have in a lifetime. And so I'm very grateful for having been here, and grateful for the monks who've come and taken care of me and the monastery, and hope they've benefited as well. I'm not dying. I'll still be around. I'll plan to be here next Tuesday, but also just to enjoy Lumpur, being here. Just open it up to any questions or things anybody has to say, if they'd like. Mm-hmm.
Well, great gratitude for Tangino today. It was a reflection, he gave a reflection on the body, meditation, and just as you were saying, and finding where it feels good. So an hour before I came in here, I found out I have a tear in my shoulder. And I could have sat here and worried about my shoulder, what I should do about it, and yada, yada, yada. And just having that talk with Tangino, everything just kind of shifted. And I had an extremely pleasant sit. And there was some effort though, and I realized, well, here's effort. This is effort, because my mind could go back to, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? No, this is it. Just enjoy this. That's what they talk about with right effort. And it was just great. It was really great. And so I guess my right shoulder, enjoying my right shoulder, and my left shoulder, not so much. So just that subtle little discussion we had earlier today. I really appreciate it. So I guess that's what I want to share. I did have a question that he suggested I ask, but I don't know what other people ask questions. So anyway, great gratitude.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for your lovely Dhamma talks, and I've really enjoyed them, and I've enjoyed having you here very much, and I hope you'll come back soon.
Thank you. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about excitement and enthusiasm? You mentioned almost tempering excitement.
So the question is about tempering excitement and enthusiasm. What is that about? Well, I think that when there is kind of when there's a feeling of being excited about something, it's quite a pleasant feeling. It can be, or enthusiastic about something, and it can also, that can be a positive emotion. That can be something that we can kind of utilize. Say, oh, I'm enthusiastic about the practice, for example. But there can be times when excitement and enthusiasm move into a direction that's a little bit puts us in like overwhelm, and so it's more of a sense of the mind moving from more of a calm or a neutral sense to something that's like often geared towards desire or wanting a certain outcome. So we get quite activated, and in my own sense of that, if I'm aware in my body around that feeling, it feels a little good, but then there's this sense of kind of the energy gets to a point of feeling uncomfortable, or it's not pleasant, or it's not something that I feel like I can actually have a steady mind around, right? So I'm not actually clear, and without clarity, I can't kind of see or evaluate what's actually occurring. So I think there's one way of looking at it is just to kind of look into your own mind, for example, if you're experiencing some excitement about something, and just kind of to say, like, well, what is that about? Is there, like, am I actually guessing at what the outcome's going to be? Am I assuming that it's going to be as great as I think it's going to be? Because sometimes we get really excited about something and then there's just massive disappointment. People might get really excited about a car they buy, and then once the money's paid for, it's just not that interesting anymore. So it's like, it's kind of, or people, when people are falling in love, very excited, or not even falling in love, just they meet somebody new, very excited, but it doesn't usually last, that excitement. And then we can sometimes make mistakes based on that excitement, or we overlook certain qualities that in others or in ourselves that might have been tempered if there was a sense of like, okay, I'm getting pretty, like my level of excitement is actually making this thing look much better than it actually is. And so then you say, oh, maybe if I tempered it a little bit, then I'd be able to see it more clearly. I could be able to see the situation more clearly. I still might be interested, but I'm not kind of like blinding myself with that excitement. I think the word enthusiasm is a little bit different, because it seems a little more of a skillful emotion than excitement. Because enthusiasm can be like, it's paired with like an interest, like oneself getting behind something, kind of like, I think that's, enthusiasm to me seems more of a more skillful emotion, but I think it can overboil into excitement. So that's where you know, if somebody's enthusiastic towards work or enthusiastic towards whatever it is, it tends to mean to me more of a sense of like momentum that is helpful. But then it can, again, yeah, we have to be tempering that to see like, well, am I overly enthusiastic? Am I going too far? And sometimes we can go too far in terms of how much we're putting ourselves into something that's imbalanced in a way that it's going to cause us resentment later or frustration later because we've put so much of our experience and time into it that it's not balanced. And then other people can also take advantage of that. And they can say like, wow, this person's enthusiastic, I'll let them do all the work. And I was like, oh, why am I the only one doing the work? Well, because you were so enthusiastic. So, you know, we have to be careful with those qualities of mind, and anytime that I've been really excited by something, I'm always there's always disappointment following it some way or another, because I think because of the sense of being excited about something for me doesn't balance the fact that like I'm probably not going to be that excited later on about it. And then the other part is what I talked to you about, that I'm not acknowledging something about this that is probably not as right as I think it is. Like you get a new puppy, and you're so excited. You're, oh, this is going to be great. It's like, oh my God, I have to train this thing not to pee on the floor, and it can't eat all the time, and it's waking me up at night, and it's just like, this is too much to handle. But then, you know, as with all things, there's change. The puppy gets trained. You know, thank goodness for most people, kids aren't, you know, 2 years old for the rest of their lives. You know, they kind of, there's some fruits to the practice, to the parenting. It was Colleen brought her daughter over to the monastery the other day, and all of us remarked that we were quite impressed with her because she was very mature for her age. Her responses to like the other two kids who were around seemed a bit wise, like how to actually engage with younger kids. I think she's 13. 10? Really? So yeah, she was just kind of taking care of there was a younger girl there, and she was just, you know, making sure she was included when the little girl's brother wanted to exclude her, or she was checking in and expressed her gratitude at the end, and she wasn't trying to get away and get into the car and get on the internet or whatever it was. So there was, you know, she was interested in what was happening, and so that brought up to mind, like, what did Colleen do so well? What did she and her husband do so well to, you know, it's not usually just the luck of the draw, it's also that there's some, you know, there's some parenting involved, there's some kind of caring, and so we're doing this in our lives. We're taking care of things, and how we take care of things and how we do that really shows. You know, it comes out, even in a case with a very difficult child who just it seems like a lot of things are against them, and people might say, oh, that's a really difficult child, but we don't know, for example, like how much good parenting has allowed that child to blossom so much more than if they didn't have that good guidance. So we're dealing with our relationships in a similar way, you know. We're trying to care for them, put time into how we relate to other people, and then we see that reflects in our own mind as well. You know, how we deal with others makes us feel good inside and makes us feel happy and not remorseful. So yeah, there's just some thoughts on that. Two questions, okay.
The first question is...
Can you speak a bit louder just because a fan came on?
Sure. Is death of a person predestined due to a particular cause?
Is the death of a person predetermined due to a particular cause? Well, that's not a question I can really answer. I mean, if you're talking about, you get into questions about free will, we talk about questions of what karma, the implications of karma are, and it's just not an easy question to get to. I mean, we can say that if a truck runs you over and you die, then yeah, like that was due to the cause of being run over by a truck. As to it being predetermined, that's not something that the Buddha really talked about, but he did talk about the fact that our actions affect what happens to us in our lives, and so we can say that the actions that we perform in our life and in our past lives would possibly have an influence on our death. But he also said that all things are not determined by karma, are not determined by our actions. And so it's not always, it's not always based on our actions. So if you can have somebody who smokes their entire life, 3 packs a day, and they live till they're 93, and you can have somebody who doesn't smoke at all and lives an incredibly healthy lifestyle, and they die at 28 of lung cancer. So it's just not a knowable thing. But what we can do is sort of try to be as skillful as we can in our life, because that really offers us the best opportunities in life in terms of having the best results for ourselves and others. So that's about all I have to say about that.
How do we skillfully practice the Bramaviharas with family members who actively lie, steal, engage in alcoholism and drug addiction?
So how can we skillfully engage with the Bramaviharas with family members? The Bramaviharas are engaging with well-wishing, goodwill, compassion, gladness for other people's successes, and equanimity. How do we engage with those in our minds in regards to family members who lie and cheat and, I don't know if they said steal, and drink and use drugs, are harmful to others, harmful to themselves? Well, it's not easy. I would say it's tough because, what might come up in that kind of situation is resentment and anger towards those family members. And so it's can be very difficult to break through to feelings of warmth and pleasantness if one has had, let's say abuse from another person, or is lied to. So I think that just acknowledging the difficulty of that is very important. Acknowledging that it's not easy to practice with skillful emotions in that way. So you have to meet that where you can. So the encouragement of that is start with what's easier for yourself. So I was suggesting a kitten or a puppy dog. It's probably easier than your family members. So you start with what's easiest, and then you when you get skilled in that, in the Bramaviharas, whatever they might be, whether it's goodwill, wishing well for others or yourself, or compassion, you move into more and more difficult ways of sort of relating that to others. And you can't, so I wouldn't recommend starting with that. So that usually in the progression, this came, I believe, after the Buddhist time, the progression that suggests is that the difficult family members you're talking about come last. They're the difficult person. That's what's expressed. So first is like a mentor. Second, or somebody who you find is like a great person in the world. The next would be somebody who is like a friend. You can also, if you don't find it too difficult, you can practice with yourself, wishing yourself well. And then you'd move more into a neutral person, somebody who doesn't really mean somebody that you go to the drugstore and you see them and you have no real feeling about them. They're just a person who you've seen before. And so you try to wish them well. And then you start to move into the more difficult once you've gained that. So that's kind of how one deals with that. In terms of like, well, I want to still practice with my family members, I want to have compassion and goodwill towards them, then I think one of the ways in that situation is through karuna, through compassion, to know that they are probably going to be quite affected by their negative actions. And they're not, it's possible that they might have pleasant experiences in their life and goodness come to them, but eventually all of those actions are going to catch up with them. And so we have a compassion around like, oh wow, like even just seeing that somebody who lies isn't trusted, like that's very painful to see, that there's no trust for them. And we just want to try to recognize like the kind of sadness in that. That's that sort of compassion we can have for another. That unfortunately they have to receive the repercussions of their suffering, and we can know that when they respond out of these unskillful ways, they are suffering. They are experiencing sadness and difficulty and problems and anxiety and whatever it might be. So we try to develop that compassion for them. One of the things that's difficult in life in general is that we often judge people based on what we see their actions are. Somebody says something stupid or does something, and we judge them for that. We make an assumption rather than thinking, maybe they're having a really tough day. When I was driving in the car with Anna, who was driving over here, we almost got run over by a UPS truck. And I feel very fond of UPS because they're the only delivery service that actually brings our packages to us. The other one, FedEx, drops their stuff off at the post office. So I try to have and that's illegal. And I try to have a sense of kindness around them. Okay, well maybe it's just, just the drivers having a tough day, or they don't want to bring our package to us, which they're paid to do. They don't do it. But Anna's skillful response was, when this driver almost ran us over, was, I think they're probably stressed because they have a lot to do, and they're probably pushed to a point of needing to drive that quickly. And so that's a skillful response we can have. We can say, oh, like, rather than looking at like, that driver's a jerk, or that driver is don't they know better and they're going to kill somebody someday, and we have compassion. Oh, we can even extend it further and wish them well. May they experience restful days at work. May they experience very little packages that have to go out that day, the next day, or whatever it is. We try to wish them well, rather than come from a place of judgment and anger, because usually we really don't know why people are doing the things that they're doing, and if we knew other people's suffering, really truly knew that, for a particular person who we're judging, we probably would not feel the same way we would normally feel about them, if it's in a negative sense. And one of the ways that we know that is through knowing our own suffering. And so we try to see our own suffering and then see that that's the same potential for other beings. So I think that I'm out of time right now, so I'm going to end the discussion here and wish everyone well on the live stream and everyone well in the room who's here. I will still see you again for the next couple of weeks, but perhaps some of you can say goodbye to Venerable Gino and Venerable Dhammawaro. Did you can end the live stream and then you can actually say goodbye to people if you want. Okay, goodbye.